Today on what is your FIRE figure, or FIRE being FIRE. What is your financially independent retire early figure? Have you thought about that? Have you thought about what is the lump sum amount you're going to need so you never have to work again? So that might be because you're going to retire, or or you want to retire early, whatever it is, but you just don't want to work again and don't have to worry about money again once you hit that figure. So what is that figure for you? What's the first figure that comes into your mind? Maybe you're thinking, oh, I need 1 million or 5 million, 10 million, whatever it is. Now, hopefully this video just open your eyes a little bit onto how you can work out what that figure is, but not only just work out what the figure is, but then work out a sustainable and realistic way of you achieving that figure. So stay tuned to this video and we'll run into how we're going to do that. So first of all, thinking about what your figure is, one of the easiest things to do is think about what are your annual living expenses, and think about the pot that potentially you're able to save up. Now, some people will get to retirement and they might save up, say, £200,000. They think, yeah, great, I've saved up £200,000, but their annual living expenses might be, say, £40,000. So what have they got? They've got 5 years worth of living expenses ahead of them. That's not enough, is it? It's not enough. You're not going to get far on 5 years living expenses if you're not working. So we really want to think about that, and it needs to be a little bit of an eye-opener, because often as business owners in construction, we might not be investing in a pension. It's very unlikely, it's not as if we're working for the government or something like that and they're investing in a pension automatically for us. So we need to think about how we're going to create a lump sum figure for ourselves so that we can comfortably retire. So how do we do that? Well, let me just share my iPad. Now, there's a few ways of getting to our lump sum figure that we think we need. So maybe have a figure in mind at the moment. I don't know what your figure is. Let's just say up here, you decide your figure is, I want £2 million, say. I'm just throwing a figure out there. So how are we going to get to your FIRE figure? Well, it depends what stage of business you're currently at the moment. So maybe you're on the tools. If you're on the tools and you're working, maybe not every day, but you're working a few days a week on the tools, what you're going to find is you're going to hit a bit of a bottleneck in your business where you can't expand anymore. And it can be a little bit frustrating. So you find that you just can't break through this barrier, and you're probably turning over around £250,000 to £450,000. Now, doing this, you're never going to be able to, highly unlikely you're going to be able to save up enough money to get to your FIRE figure if you stay on the tools. That's one thing to think about. So you've probably got to do something else and really save hard and invest your money another way to be able to achieve that. So what's the next level? Well, some recognise that being on the tools isn't right. They need to create some financial independence. So they finally get off the tools and they get into this level here where they're trying to create £1 million plus business. Now, if you've seen any of my other videos, I'm always going on about £1 million plus company, because I really believe that's a sweet spot for many construction businesses. It allows the business owner to earn good profits, and they're basically creating more time, freedom and money for themselves. It's a real lifestyle business where it's not too stressful and you can create really earn really good profits. So this is what many of my clients are working with in the Develop Mastermind. So let's imagine we've created a £1 million plus company. Now, we might take our profits out of that. I know businesses I'm working with now who are turning over £1 million and doing £200,000 a year profits, no problem. Now, some of them are moving that money into things like property development. That's something I did. And property development might be your way of achieving your FIRE figure. You think, I'll get a few properties under my belt, I might flip some properties, and eventually I'll get to my FIRE figure by doing that. So maybe that's your plan, which is fine. So you create a nice sustainable business down here, and then you move your money up into here to some property investment. For others, they want to do it another way. They really want to think about selling their business. Now, being realistic, if you're down here, it's going to be quite tough to sell a business because it's owner operated. It's hard to sell a business like that when you're at that level. So some need to push through into what we call boardroom. And this is where they move into a level where they're probably going to be turning over somewhere between £4 and £10 million a year. You can go much bigger than that, of course. But again, this is a level that some of my clients are aiming for. It's quite realistic for them. Now, when you're sitting at boardroom, you're now the CEO of the business. So you're sitting up at high level as CEO, and underneath you, you might have, a sales director, operations director, finance director. So you're really sitting up the top, and you've got all your managers that are working underneath you. Now, when you get to that level and you put the strategies in place to do that, well, it's quite realistic that you would be able to sell your business at this level, and that might be your way of hitting your fire figure. So that might be your plan. You might be listening to this thinking, yep, I want to get to boardroom and sell, or you might be thinking, oh, I couldn't think of anything worse than running a £10 million company. I'd rather just sustain 1 million and get into property development and get my £2 million fire figure that way. I'm not saying there's a right or wrong answer to this at all, but just really trying to get you to think about how are you going to achieve it, and have you really thought about a plan on how you're going to do that. So, okay, so that's helped us think about, maybe our strategy on how we want to achieve this fire figure. But what we haven't answered is the question, what is my fire figure? How do we work out what our fire figure is? How do we work out how we can be financially independent and retire early? Well, there's an easy way of doing this, and this worksheet will help you do it. The first thing we want to do is work out what is your annual living expense. What do you want to be spending in retirement quite comfortably? So you're not scripting and scraping, but you're living well. Remember, your kids are probably grown up and left the nest by then. So let's imagine here. Let's just put a figure down. Let's say we said I want £50,000 a year to live on until I die. Okay. Now, what they calculate, this fire figure, this hasn't come from me. There's been studies that have done on this, that when you get your lump sum and then you invest it into, passive investment funds, stocks and shares, things like that, but nothing too risky, and then we allow for inflation, what we can do is work out our fire figure by dividing our annual expenses by 0.03. So this, if we got a rate of return of that, of 3%, then what our fire figure would be, let's do £50,000 divided by 0.03. Now this figure might surprise you. What did you think it would be? The figure is 1.66 million. Right. So how does that figure sound to you? Might be a little bit of an eye-opener, because when I first said, what is your fire figure? Maybe you said 5 million or 10 million and you had a huge sum in your head. But actually, 1.6 million, is that achievable for you? You might think, what, I could probably get that in the next 5 years or 10 years. So maybe that's a bit of an eye-opener to think, actually, I'm not that far away from it, or you might be nearly there already. So that's a bit of an eye-opener. First of all, we know what figure you need, and if that was invested into the stock market in passive investment funds, you could quite comfortably get a return and live off that without eating into your pot. So the next question is, well, how are we going to get to our fire figure? So we said there was a few ways of doing it, by potentially buying and selling property, developing, or maybe we want to do it by selling our business. So I'm just going to focus on selling the business at the moment. So to sell a business, often businesses are valued on what we call EBITDA, which is earnings before interest, tax, depreciation, and amortization. So what that basically is your bottom line, the profit that you're getting before your accountant starts applying all these extra bits. So what are the earnings of your business? So the way we can work that out, first of all, let's put our fire figure in. So we said 1.6 million. And if we wanted to get 1.6 million as a lump sum figure, what would we need as annual profit so we could sell our business for 1.6 million? Well, normally you can sell, especially construction companies, again, there's a big variant on this, but you can usually sell businesses between 4 and 8 times your annual earnings. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the average of 6. So if you had 1.6 million as your fire figure, we're going to divide that by 6. Then what we get is we need average annual earnings of £266,000. All the sixes again. So that's the annual profit you would need as a company to be able to sell your business for 1.6 million. So now our plan is becoming a little bit clearer, isn't it? If we create 266,000 a year of annual profit, then you potentially can sell your business for 1.6 million. Bear in mind that you know, to get annual profits of 266,000. Well, actually, we're going to come on to that now. What the turnover is on how you reach that. So let's come on to that next bit. How would you achieve £266,000 profit? Well, let's take our annual profit, 266,000, and we're going to presume we're getting a net profit of 12%. If you're a healthy company, you should be getting a percentage around 12%. Again, there's been studies done on what companies are doing well. If your company's down at like the 5% level, we often say that that's life support. In my book, I give a ratio of all the different net profit margins that you need to hit. But 12% net profit would be quite healthy for a company. It wouldn't be anything unusual. And we need to bear in mind too that if we're going to be trying to sell this to investors, they're going to want to see a healthy net profit margin. So we're going to go for 12% as something to aim for. So if we were £266,000 annual profit, we're going to divide that by 0.12, now 12%. And what that means is we would need to be turning over 2.16 million, all the sixes again. And if we were turning over 2.2 million at a 12% net profit margin, we would be earning £266,000 annual profit, which means we could then potentially think about selling our business for 1.6 million, which would be your fire figure. And then you've got enough to live on £50,000 a year. So hopefully that's clear. A few things you need to bear in mind, that obviously if we're going to sell a business, if we're at 2.2 million turnover, we need to be somewhere in boardroom. So we might need to make it a little bit more than that, because if we're going to sell a business, it needs to be sustainable without you. So you need to put the management structure in place for that to happen. So oftentimes you find the turnover, 2.2 million might not be enough turnover. You might need to increase that a little bit so that you can afford the management structure underneath you. But something to bear in mind there. So, this is a bit of a guide. I hope it's a little bit of an eye-opener for you to think, what is my fire figure? Okay, now I know what my fire figure is. Have I actually got a plan to get there? Now, I'm working with my clients to make sure they get to their fire figure. We've got a clear strategy in place, whether that's a 5-year plan or a 10-year plan on how we're going to get there. If you're interested in talking about that, then click on the next page and we can potentially have a chat about that later on. But hope that video is useful, and we'll hopefully catch up soon.